This episode of Pool Magazine Podcast is proudly sponsored by Aquamatic Cover Systems, the leaders in functional technology across an entire spectrum of swimming pool covers. Today, retractable pool covers are an important part of any pool project. Regardless of your needs or budget, if your concerns are safety, energy efficiency, pool cleanliness, evaporation control, or all the above, Aquamatic has you covered. To learn more about Hydrolux, our most advanced and adaptable automatic system, visit us on the web today at aquamatic.com.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joe Trusty. Today, I'm chatting with Todd Thomasson of Rockwater Farm Landscape and Hardscapes. They're high-end luxury pool builders out of Loudoun County, Virginia. It's a pleasure to have you with us today on the show, Todd.
Thank you.
For those unfamiliar with Rockwater Farm and what it is that you guys specialize in, can you share the story behind the company and how you guys got started in pool and landscape design?
So the company started about 20 years ago. Rockwater Farm's name of a beef cattle farm I grew up on in Southern Virginia. And then I thought it sounded a lot better than Todd's Landscaping. So we went with Rockwater Farm for the landscape company. And I was a trained stonemason with a background basically in horticulture from Virginia Tech, and worked for a couple of companies, ultimately went out on my own and went full-time in Mother's Day of 2006. And we started landscape projects. I remember simply doing the sod in the front of a townhouse, and it just continued to evolve from that. We began to pick up more and more of the landscape projects. Ultimately, we jumped into maintenance as we had clients asking us to help care for the projects that we had created because they weren't happy with the people they were working with and how they were doing it. And I needed people to do more than just a spring cleanup, to keep them employed, and got into mowing and full maintenance service. So companies kind of split in a couple different ways. We have design build and we have a complete property maintenance and service, probably in the area of 1,500 homes or so. Our team successfully runs all that, and I don't spend much time on that versus in design build swimming pools. But we got into swimming pools because we were tired of competing, allegedly I'd say competing with chucking the truck and so forth when it comes to pools, not pools but patios and plantings, and there are a lot more options out there. Whereas when you get into doing swimming pools, there's a much smaller group of people doing those. So we were able to really kind of hone in on who our target customer is, who our competition is. And with that came larger hardscape projects, pavilions, and things like that.
You guys are going strong nearly 20 years now. How would you describe your company's design philosophy when it comes to designing and building luxury pools and outdoor living spaces?
We simply don't build the same thing twice. It's one thing if someone wants a typical, say, 20 by 40, from the vinyl liner days in the 80s, but even that will be a bit different. But every time's the first time. So it doesn't matter if it's still another 20 by 40, if it's the 50th one we've done, but the backyard's going to be different, the access, the elevations. And when we get into the more unique projects is what we really enjoy, doing when you have everyone kind of has a different need or a different point in their life as to what they're trying to accomplish. But when we do the pools with the more elaborate backyards, that's where I get excited. Pools with the pavilions, the fireplaces, and all those sorts of things. That's when you begin to get a lot more creative.
Sure. There's a lot of stories out there about a service company that gravitated towards pool construction eventually. But it's very common also to see a landscape company as well get into pool construction as well. And these people become a pool builder out of necessity, more or less. Your work in particular blends pool construction with landscaping seamlessly. How important is that holistic, whole backyard approach when it comes to your kind of projects?
It's really beneficial for the client because if we miss something, it's our fault. It's also a risk for us, but we've done it long enough that we are, we've made enough mistakes along the way to understand, that cost us money. Let's not do that again. But it gives the client, a single point of contact. You don't have, call it a pool guy coming in, throwing a shell on the ground. And, we'll get phone calls. Hey, I just had a pool put in. Can you come build me a patio? And it's like, what do you mean? So, they got the pool put in, they don't have a plan, they don't have anything. So how do you determine where to put the pool, or what elevation, or what's the space? What are you trying to accomplish in the space? Where do you want to put chairs and tables? And so I want a pavilion on this side. You can't, you're too close to the property line. So we take everything into account, and we're often, pretty much every time, we're not the least expensive, but as I'd say we're probably the most accurate, because we're going to account for everything from excavation and the stonework, everything all the way down to the portage on in the driveway.
What do you think differentiates Rockwater Farm from the other high-end pool builders in your area?
Good question. There are other people that do what we do, but I feel that it's a small number. So there's, what's high end is all, open for interpretation. There's parts of, even just in Virginia where a simple 20 by 40 is high end. And then, we'll do a $500,000 project and it looks like nothing compared to another project. So it's really a matter of building a relationship with the customer, caring for that customer, providing them the best service possible, and just being there and being responsive. It's all the basic stuff. It's nothing really out of the box, silver bullet, or anything like that.
Well, we're going to spend a little bit of time today discussing one unique project that caught my eye, and that's a geometric shaped pool. It's got like a 3/4 caddy corner spa. I mean, visually, it's pretty striking. I mean, but tell us, how did this project begin? What was the client looking for? Something highly custom from the start?
So they bought that home. They were a longtime maintenance customer, and I knew the name. I'd never met them. And then they bought this new house in a popular new neighborhood, and they called us to come in, provide maintenance services there. And they wanted to talk about a landscape project, patio project. So I went out, met with them, and we put together a patio with an outdoor kitchen and pergola that was tied into the house. But discovered ultimately the goal was to have a swimming pool. And we got the patio, the initial project built, and then as it came to developing the design for the rest of the backyard and what they want that to be, there was very little guidance from them. They had seen work that we had done. There were certain things they wanted, pavilion, sacking outdoor kitchen for entertaining, obviously the swimming pool. They added the slide in, but they literally just said, do what you do. And so I came up with a design that I thought was really cool, and there was very minor feedback from them, and from that point it was go build it. It was actually really smooth, but at the same time we've also had clients where 12 revisions later we're trying to figure out what it is that they want.
Well, the spa design is really so distinctive. It's like a Pac-Man or a pizza with a slice removed for the tanning ledge and the stairs. I mean, was this concept client driven, or did it come to you from your design team?
We came up with the design. The client wanted an autocover. Young families, they wanted to, for safety, as well as benefits of capturing heat and that sort of thing. But we're just trying to come up with something different. I didn't want the typical spa on the side of the pool that spills in. Those are a dime a dozen, and ultimately you want I would hope that you would want something different in your portfolio. And so that's kind of how we approach design. What haven't we done, or what can we pull from different projects and combine together to create something unique? And adding the multiple vanishing edges and getting the auto cover to work with it ultimately kind of came up with what we call this crow's nest of a spa that sits up on the corner of the pool, because one end of the pool is recessed with a sunken patio, and just kind of sits up there and looks like Pac-Man.
Yeah. Is there any functional benefits doing a spa this way?
Another concept, or train of thought rather, behind it was that if it was entirely circular, someone would have their back to the pool. And so we keep visibility of the water as an important piece of the project for safety. I grew up with a pool. My mom's a school teacher. She'd sit up there and with a whistle on the deck, and that was the warning before she'd come down and grab us. But so this is always, in back of mind, thinking of mom and thinking of our customers, being able to see the water, from a safety point of view. And so by taking out the piece that was facing, that had its back, to the pool, it allowed the auto cover to function and kept everyone looking out at the pool, across that space, regardless of where you sat within the spa.
What was the client's reaction? I mean, obviously they loved the design, otherwise they wouldn't have went with it. But I mean, what was their reaction to seeing your approach to taking the spa this direction?
I think a lot of it was trust, having been a client for a long time and trusting us and seeing our, past work, seeing the design. People often get excited looking at the design and they saw it and they're like, that looks awesome. But sometimes you kind of wonder how much of that design is actually being conveyed and that they're understanding, how it's unique and what's involved in putting it together. But they trusted us and, we were able to pull it off and create something really unique for them. But it looked cool, but then, at the same time, seeing it in person is completely different from a rendering or, a CAD drawing.
The photos are really striking with this pool project. I mean, can you talk to us about some of the material selections that you chose?
Yeah, Eric or Peak Visual did a great job, capturing this project, photographing it. And we worked with multiple different materials on this project. We have the marble around the pool, which is nice underfoot because it doesn't get hot, not nearly as much as something like a flagstone or a lot of the pavers, but even just bare concrete gets super hot. So using the marble around it with a sandblasted finish was able to, maintain, some grip at the same time, comfortable to walk on. It's like the pool I grew up with is concrete. We had to splash water out of the pool and run for the diving board because your feet would burn up. But then once we get underneath the pavilion's kind of, cockeyed and at an angle to the pool. So it's, viewed well from the house because it is in the backyard, but it's kind of to the side. And so by putting the pavilion at an angle, we're able to capture it, more visually, appealing and striking. And so when we did that, we changed the pattern and went with like a Pennsylvania flagstone underneath the pavilion, which is a big timber frame. So it's kind of rustic and, pulling in, a different material that's rustic in nature itself, kind of help tile that together and create, a little bit of a different space there. Everything on this project is all natural stone. We don't really do many pavers, everything's masonry. And, I was a stonemason myself, so I'm completely biased to it, but I also just believe it's a better product.
The aerial views show a beautiful gradient transition from neutral to darker hues. I mean, was that intentional when planning how the pool's interior and the surrounding hardscape would look from an elevation?
Yes, not only from elevation, but safety, so that when you're walking, steps, I like to have the step treads be a contrasting material. So you visually they'll stand out and you don't just walk and not really see that step. If it's, for example, if it's just all travertine, it just keeps running travertine everywhere. You don't really see that step. If the sun's out bright, you could slip and fall. So we like to change materials at grade, changes, steps and so on, walls, as well as sometimes just to separate a space and say, hey, you're kind of coming into this next space. And especially if you have a pavilion, sometimes just going down a couple of steps into it, psychologically you're arriving, and so that gives you an opportunity. Those steps are drawing a hard line. You can change the material as long as it's complementary. It'll look nice. And then the plaster we went with, it's not a black pool, but it's like a darker blue, and so that also gives you really good reflections in the water, having that darker hue, as well as holding water temperature. But depending upon your summer, that could be bad at the same time and make the pool too hot.
Beautiful nighttime shots over here. I mean, can you talk to us about how this backyard comes alive at night and what you did for planning as far as daytime and nighttime usage?
Sure. So there's a lot of lighting throughout the space, be it in the pavilion or just, landscape lighting around the perimeter. A couple of nice features that we did are these solid granite fire bowls that are gas powered, and turning those on at night, you really appreciate them because you don't really see the flame too well during the day. And then the fireplace that's underneath the pavilion as well, turn TV on, that sort of thing. There's just a lot of different activity that you can take place in that area, as well as the lighting and all the planting we did. It just kind of creates that nice ambiance, and really just something unique. You're not just in a backyard, you're kind of in your own place as a resort.
Yeah, I love the deck jets too. I mean, it's really beautiful look. It's really tranquil and serene what you've created back there.
Yeah, the kids play with the deck jets or the bubblers we have in the tanning ledge. They have the LED light drivers behind them, and that's a real popular feature for the kids. Or even if you're just having to get together and no one's necessarily in the pool, it's an illuminated feature. It's not quite Bellagio, but it does add some interest.
Was there a moment like during construction where you knew this project was like definitely headed down the right direction and was going to be a showstopper?
I wouldn't say during construction, just because you're so busy and we have multiple projects and going on at the same time. You're just kind of, some days you're chasing your tail, and other days if it's going too smooth, you're wondering, what am I forgetting? But it really kind of sank in when we did the first photo shoot, and being there and at night, and it was just summer night. It was warm. All the lights are on. I was just kind of helping clean up. Everyone had gone. I was just able to kind of walk around the space and just really kind of take it in for once. And because usually it's just you do the design, the sale, you get it built, all your thank yous throughout the project and check-ins, and it's quick and easy to get caught up in the haste of on to the next project, because you've sold more jobs and everyone wants to know when you're going to do theirs. And it was nice just to be able to kind of stop for a moment and really just kind of look at it and go, crap, we designed and actually built this. And look, this looks awesome. And so I just remember that moment standing out. But they're awesome customers too. Often go back, just tell them thank you for allowing us the opportunity to do this.
Here's another beautiful one that I'm looking at. I mean, you guys are definitely doing something special in the backyard. This one, I love the recessed lighting underneath the stairs and the lighting in the corner of the pool and the spillover into the trough. It's really pretty.
Yep, on that project, they have a view of their property that's out that corner. Because you can see the rear property line, the neighbor behind them isn't that far away, and those plants have really grown in now. It's all solid, but the view is looking out through that corner of the pool, and it's probably 3 acres of land they have to the side. And so we put the vanishing edge in the corner, and it just kind of carries your eye. There's even like a bench built into the corner because the homeowner, he wanted to just sit there in the corner with his arms on the vanishing edge and just kind of look back across his backyard and take it in. And then one unique thing is the fireplace that we built. Beautiful big fireplace up on the patio. This project actually doesn't have a pavilion, which is coming less common these days, but people tend to want a covered space. But the fireplace has an antique in it that they brought back from vacation in France. And I was talking to the mason. It's like, hey, look, don't drop this thing. It's the only one. We got to make sure and get it in there right. And so that was something special for them.
So many Pinterest-worthy pools on your website over here. I mean, if you guys are into dream building and idea building for your backyard, rockwaterfarm.com. Check it out. Great website. So I'm going to lead you off with one last question, Todd. All right, what's next for you guys at Rockwater Farm? Any exciting projects on the horizon?
We actually have a really big one on the horizon. So if you think of your typical pool as, say, a 20 by 40 and 800 square feet, we've got one coming up that's 2,700 square feet. And I actually had to get the homeowner to dial it back a little bit. He was wanting to go even bigger. And he's like, do you think it's big enough? I was like, yeah, yes, I do. It's plenty big. So that'll be a fun one that we're waiting on the permits to come through so we can get started on that. And one unique feature within that is I'm an aviation nut. I fly. Originally I wanted to fly F-16s, but I built pools instead. This particular customer happened to fly F-18s in his career. And so when it came to the pool design, I hid something aviation related in his pool. And I told him about it and said, hey, take a look at the design and let me know if you see something, that's tied to aviation. And he's looking at it, he's all excited. He's like, I don't see it. What is it? I was like, look at the tanning ledge. And he still couldn't see us. It's a visor. So I made the tanning ledge shaped in the form of a visor that would be like a fighter helmet for the F-18. And so once he saw that, he's like, oh, that's so cool. Just tying in little things like that make it personal to someone. When that project kicks off, that'll really be something impressive to look back on. It's hard to even capture the scale of it, looking on a rendering and see how it is and compared to the house. But at 2,700 square feet, a 75-foot swim lane, beach entry wrapping around an elevated champagne spa that's inside of the pool. And the tanning ledge itself is probably 1,000 square feet. So it's meant for entertaining. They've got a large family, so it'll be a really cool space when it's done.
Well, you guys are certainly on our radar now, Todd. I'll tell you that. 20 years doing business, you guys are definitely doing something right. We've been chatting with Todd Thomasson, Rockwater Farm, Landscape, and Hardscapes out of Loudoun County, Virginia. Thanks for joining us today, Todd. Thanks for sharing your work with us.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's all the time we have left today. Make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe. And we'll catch you next time on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast.
This episode of Pool Magazine Podcast is proudly sponsored by Aquamatic Cover Systems, the leaders in functional technology across an entire spectrum of swimming pool covers. Today, retractable pool covers are an important part of any pool project. Regardless of your needs or budget, if your concerns are safety, energy efficiency, pool cleanliness, evaporation control, or all the above, Aquamatic has you covered. To learn more about Hydrolux, our most advanced and adaptable automatic system, visit us on the web today at aquamatic.com.